The Greeks feared many monsters, but Medusa was different. She was the only one who could be defeated only by refusing to look at her. When Perseus was sent to kill her, he was given neither a powerful army nor a divine weapon. Instead, he received a polished bronze shield and a warning more important than anything else: never look directly into her eyes. At first glance, this seems like a simple rule from an old monster story, a clever trick to help the hero survive. But the longer you examine the myth, the stranger that warning becomes. Because Medusa was not only feared by the Greeks, she was used by them. Her face appeared on shields, armor, gates, temples, and places considered sacred. The very face that was supposedly too dangerous to look upon was placed everywhere people sought protection. But the strange thing was not merely her presence. It was her expression. The oldest depictions show no triumphant beast, no creature hunting human beings. Instead, Medusa stares directly at the viewer. Her eyes are wide open, her tongue protrudes from her mouth. Her features appear both human and foreign, almost like a warning, almost like something trapped between two worlds. Archaeologists have found her face on pottery, temples, and tombs throughout the Greek world. Not hidden, not concealed, but displayed in places where every passerby was meant to see it. That is what makes her role so unusual. Most monsters existed outside the boundaries of order. Medusa became part of that order. Her face marked boundaries, between inside and outside, between safety and danger, between the known world and whatever lay beyond it. And it is there that her significance begins to grow beyond the story of a single figure. If Medusa was merely a monster, why did the Greeks place her face above the entrances of their temples? Why did warriors carry her image into battle? And why does her gaze appear wherever order was meant to be protected from chaos? The closer you look, the less the familiar story makes sense. Because the Medusa most people know today is only the final version of a much older myth. But here the story becomes even stranger, because this version of Medusa was not the beginning of her story. The oldest Gorgons look different. They appear less like cursed women and more like ancient protective images whose origins reach far deeper than the familiar tale of Perseus. Almost as if Medusa had been reinterpreted again and again across the centuries. Even the Greeks could not fully agree on who or what she truly was. Before she became a Gorgon, she was said to have been an extraordinarily beautiful young woman. Her hair was admired, her appearance celebrated. She served in the temple of Athena, goddess of wisdom, war, and divine order. Then something happened that changed everything. Ancient sources disagree on the details. Some describe an act of violence committed by Poseidon within Athena's temple. Others tell the story differently. Yet almost every version ends at the same point. Medusa leaves the world of ordinary people and becomes something else, something no one is allowed to look upon. Her hair transforms into living snakes. Her face becomes deadly. A single glance is enough, and life turns to stone. Most people stop here. They hear the words curse and monster and believe they understand the story. But the Greeks rarely created monsters without meaning. Behind almost every creature stood a boundary, a warning, or a fear. And Medusa seems to represent something far older than the idea of a being that turns people into stone. Because even the man who defeats her never looks at her directly. And here the story becomes stranger still. Because Medusa was not the only figure associated with forbidden perception. Many ancient cultures believed that certain things should never be viewed directly, not because they were evil, but because they were too powerful. Even the divine often appeared only indirectly, through smoke, through rituals, through veils, through dreams, through reflections. The line between revelation and danger was thin. Perhaps that explains why the myth insists on the mirror. Because Perseus does not defeat Medusa by becoming braver, he survives because he keeps his distance. He sees, but not completely. He understands, but not directly. The myth never explains why a mirror works. It merely insists that it must be used, almost as if the question is more important than the answer. Because in this myth, it is not only Medusa who remains hidden, her meaning remains hidden as well. The more one tries to explain her, the more she changes shape. Why did Medusa have to be seen, but never directly? Perhaps because some things are not dangerous as long as they remain hidden. Perhaps they become dangerous only when they are truly understood. And at that point, Medusa's story begins to feel less like mythology and more like something profoundly human. The fear of a truth that can never be forgotten once it has been seen. These are the traces followed by the keeper of forgotten paths. Stories that first appear to be myths and then reveal themselves as warnings. But the story becomes stranger still. Because Medusa's power does not end with her death. It truly begins there. After Perseus cuts off her head, her gaze remains deadly. He carries the severed head with him, using it against kings, enemies, and other creatures. Eventually, it is given to Athena, the very goddess connected to Medusa's transformation. Athena places the Gorgon's head upon her shield, and something remarkable happens. The curse becomes a weapon. The feared becomes protection. And here the logic of the story breaks. Normally, a monster's power ends when it dies. With Medusa, the opposite happens. Her most dangerous ability survives. Her gaze continues. Her face is carried forward. Her presence does not disappear. It spreads. That makes no sense. At least not if Medusa was only a monster. But suddenly everything makes sense if she represents something else. Because knowledge does not vanish when its bearer dies. An insight can outlive its source. A truth can be passed on. And that is exactly what happens in the myth. Perseus carries the gaze. Athena adopts it. The Greek world multiplies it. What was once feared is now preserved. Almost as if the Greeks believed that Medusa's face contained not only danger, but also a form of power. A power they wanted to control, without ever fully confronting it. Perhaps the mirror was never a weapon. Perhaps it was a boundary, not between Perseus and Medusa, but between human beings and a truth that would change them forever. Because Medusa's gaze does not disappear when her body dies. It is carried onward by Perseus, by Athena, by the Greek world itself. That is the part that remains, not the snakes, not the curse, not even the beheading, but the question of why a civilization feared the face of a monster while preserving it everywhere. Perhaps Medusa was never merely the creature that turned people to stone. Perhaps she was the image of a truth that could not be killed. And if she truly was only a monster, why did the Greeks need her face everywhere?